Just believe in yourself and go after achieving whatever you need. When you get an opportunity to speak up, do that. Raise your hand when an opportunity comes.
Try and make choices that are true to yourself and not because somebody has made it and it's a popular choice and it's being popularized. Be true to yourself. Make choices that are most comfortable to you, not because a stereotype has been created and you need to follow through.
We have seen repeatedly as a best practice, we've seen it in policy, we've seen it everywhere, that when women align with women, then the universe aligns with women.
Do not let your expectations, or rather I would say, do not let societal expectations limit you, right? Support each other, keep learning and keep growing.
Welcome to the Sustainability Karma Roundtable to mark the International Women's Day. I am your host Naina Gautam, editor Sustainability Karma. Every day, women should be celebrated, but today is a day specially marked to celebrate the International Women's Day. Campaign theme is Give to Gain. Taking off from it, the theme of this roundtable is Transforming Promise into Power. We will focus on translating gender equality and equity commitments into outcomes, addressing structural and invisible barriers, strengthening human development systems, and exploring how emerging technologies such as AI can accelerate progress for women and girls. Women across the world have been doing their bit for the planet as well as prosperity. Research has increasingly shown that when women are at the helm of organizations, they embed empathy in the culture and the businesses are driven with a purpose as a core. And today we are joined by four eminent leaders in this space of hospitality, banking and communication. We welcome Anjali Mehra, Executive Vice President, Brand and Communications at the Leela Palaces, Hotels and Resorts. Dhruvi Shah, Executive Trustee and CEO, Axis Bank Foundation. Nuria Ansari, CEO, Bharti Airtel Foundation, and Nusrat Pathan, Head Corporate Social Responsibility, HDFC Bank. Joining us today will be young storytellers who are part of a Yuva Sustainability Internship program from across India and across disciplines. I welcome you all. To manage time better, I will be inviting students one by one to pose questions to our esteemed panelists alphabetically.
Good evening everyone, my name is Teeshtha Bhawsar and my question is, like many young women want to enter leadership roles but they lack confidence. So from your experience, ma'am, what are the practical advice you would give to the young girls?
Thank you, Teeshtha, for that question. First of all, I don't think confidence arrives in a full-fledged form in any way. It is built through experience and it is built over time, and it takes a lot of effort. One of the most important things young women should remember is that leadership is not about having all the answers, but the willingness to be able to learn, to listen, to take on responsibility, and to try without being scared of failure. And I think that over a period of time will help build confidence. I would say the first thing that anyone should do is concentrate on building knowledge. Learn. If you can become an expert in your craft or gain a lot of domain knowledge, whichever domain you choose that to be, it will help you to gain a lot more confidence, and preparation often quiets self-doubt. I think a lot of women, we've all been through it, we sometimes pose a lot of questions to ourselves more than others questioning us. It is about us questioning ourselves, and if we prepare ourselves and master our craft, then it quietens the self-doubt that keeps coming up. The other thing I want to just highlight is that we should not be scared to fail, to take a step back. We are all human. Don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself space. I think resilience is important, and that's intrinsic to women far more than men. I think we come back and recuperate from any setback far faster than anybody else, and we should leverage that to our advantage. The third thing I want to say is that don't be scared to, or don't shy away from seeking mentors. I think it's important to have great mentors in your life, because sometimes these mentors can help you discover aspects about yourself that you yourself didn't know. And they can guide you towards your path of gaining more confidence in yourself and achieving whatever your dreams may be. I also want to just say that confidence is not about perfection. So don't mistake confidence to be that you have to be perfect and only then you can be confident. I think it is just being who you are, being, embracing yourself for what you are, and encouraging each other to be the best version of yourself, which will help you build confidence.
My name is Sakshi Khasa and I am from Miranda House College, University of Delhi, pursuing BSc Chemistry Honours. My question is that what is the biggest thing holding rural women back from becoming financially independent today?
Thank you, Sakshi, and pleasure to be here today. I think the question before financial independence comes to very similar to what Anjali said, is what is necessary for women to move forward in a certain manner. And the life of a rural woman is very different from that of what we perceive, and definitely very different from life of urban women. The challenges are very different, the education levels are very different, the access is very different, knowledge is very, very different. Two or three things that give a lot of confidence in women is their ability to be extremely resilient. Their lives are tougher. There are unpredictable situations that happen probably every day, and it's that dealing with that over generation has built in a very strong willpower of resilience. There is a strong sisterhood that exists in rural women, which is further strengthened by the whole SHG movement. Financial independence gives them a lot of power, and that we've seen when they become part of SHGs. They start saving money for themselves, they start getting credit, they start investing in families. And when women decides to invest, they invest differently. They invest in their children, they invest in their livelihood, and they strengthen their own ability to do things better. They not only work for themselves, but they also work for the community and the society which they are part of. If you ask me what is that one single thing today that can further accelerate or bolster the movement that has started, I think it would be having land in their names. I think that is one single change that will significantly accelerate the empowerment process. It's empowerment is not like a destination. It's not a finishing line. It's work in progress. And what we are seeing is large number of women taking lead in shaping decisions for themselves, enabling their children to have better education, guiding their children better education, demanding health, managing water resources better. And it's wonderful to see how certain movements are helping this process. And it is going to be work in progress. I mean, it's how society is going to evolve. So like I said, again, it's not a finishing line or it's not a destination, but it is very visible when you see them and meet them. And as part of my work, I get the opportunity to do that very often.
First of all, good evening, ma'am. My name is Savera Panwar, and I am a student of MBA in Power Management from UPES Dehradun. My question to you, Nuria ma'am, is how does Bharti Airtel Foundation measure the shift from enrolling girls in school to empowering them as future leaders?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Savera, and thank you everyone for having me here. I think the the big question really around enrollment is enrollment for to what extent enrollment, why enrollment, so what, and what after enrollment. I think that's the big question. So at Bharti Airtel Foundation, we are paranoid about this question. It keeps us awake at night. We have 155 schools that we are running, 1100 government schools that we are supporting, and what our mission and our vision is for these schools is to make sure that it's not only to get girls in school, that's the first milestone, but I think empowerment begins when education, actually the journey is completed. And I think over the last decades, if you look at India or the world, we've made fundamental progress around getting girls to school. I mean, in fact, countries like India, where enrollment level is now very close to parity between boys and girls. But at the foundation, we really look at what happens after the girls come into the classroom. How can we make sure that they stay in the classroom? What happens? How do we create support mechanisms so that they don't drop out of classrooms at certain niche points, like whether it is the end of elementary school or the end of secondary school. There are social pressures, there are familial pressures. In rural India, girls are told क्या चलो आप पढ़ लिया और क्या करना है, घर बैठते हैं, बच्चों को काम करना है, ये करना है, वो करना है. So I think those pressures exist. We are pretty paranoid about following our girls till they complete not only school but also complete school with learning outcomes of a certain degree, especially around math, science, life skills, digital technologies, which are really shaping the future. And then what happens after school? We follow our girls not only in school, but we follow them in STEM subjects. For example, Bharti Airtel Foundation has the Bharti Airtel Scholarship, where 1,400 kids, out of which I think about 42% of them are girls, who are given a full scholarship to top engineering institutions, so that we can really take them from education to livelihood. For me, and for us at the foundation, when education gets translated into school completion, when it helps a girl understand what she can do, how she can develop, what are her interests, what are the doors that are open for her, I think that's when we feel that the journey is more complete, and it's not about just opening doors, but opening up life choices. And that's what we really focus on at the foundation, Savera. So thanks for asking the question.
Good evening, Anjali ma'am. I am Savera Panwar, a student of UPS Dehradun, and currently pursuing MBA in Power Management and Sustainability. So my question to you is, how can brands move beyond pink washing in advertising to authentic storytelling?
Thank you, Savera. I think that's a very valid question, and something that we keep thinking each time we think of a campaign or an idea that we want to float. I think brands move beyond pink washing the moment gender equality or a Women's Day celebrations stops being a campaign and becomes something that is intrinsic to their business objectives and gets embedded in our day-to-day functioning as an organization. And authentic storytelling begins with authenticity in practice. How we at the Leela approached this, it really started about 3 or 4 years ago, when on Women's Day we were brainstorming and thinking of ideas, and we said, this should not be something that just becomes a campaign on a Women's Day and we run it for about a week or 10 days and then we forget about it and all of us just go back to our day-to-day lives without making a meaningful impact in the women who work with us, the women in the industry, and women at large in the communities in which we operate. So the campaign was called Leela Empowers Her. But that is far more than a campaign. So we started looking at women within the organization, how we could bring in pay parity, equal opportunity, in mentorship for them, give them guidance to grow into leadership roles. Leela is a 40-year-old company. This year we celebrate our 40 years, and we never had a woman general manager, for example. And last year we promoted, and the Leela Palace New Delhi now has a lady general manager who's grown within the company, and that was because there was a conscious effort, mentoring, coaching, training provided for a few of our associates who were ready to take on this leadership role. And today we have a lot of women in the leadership roles. About 25% of our leadership team is women. And from there, we looked at, okay, what can we do for the industry? Because it's not just about our organization, it's about hospitality. You'll find a lot of women in hospitality, but you will find them at the mid-management level. Very few of them actually grow on to leadership positions. And that was a problem. And then we started looking at departments, and we realized that equity in the kitchens was probably the lowest. We had 1% of women in the kitchens, which is not just our problem in India, but it's a global issue. So we instituted a training program that was called Chefs at the Leela, SHEFS. The initiative started off by bringing in women chefs who had made it big in the industry and were today globally well respected. We started doing events, coaching, counseling sessions, mentorship sessions with them. We even created experiences where our existing chefs worked with these celebrity women chefs, all Indian, for guests to come and experience. And I think that gave a lot of confidence and encouragement to women down the line. And now we run an organized program called Chefs at the Leela. Take it a step further, we looked at community, and we said, if we are if we really believe in the fact that Leela empowers her, and by her we mean every woman that we come across with, then let us start supporting women in the community. So we started, the first association was with education, Kailash Satyarthiji's foundation, where we support women, education for women who have been rescued. And it's been a very successful effort or initiative which has shown great results. We are now looking at a scholarship for women in hospitality and tying up with IHM's, Indian Hotel Management Institutes. So again, we can bring in a little bit of structure there. We also came up, which was a larger sustainability initiative, which was we upcycle all the flowers which are used in our hotels, and we create incense sticks. And these incense sticks are hand rolled by women. 300 women are employed to do this through our collaboration with Pool. And these incense sticks are then infused with our signature fragrance, and we use them for gifting. We don't take any money for this. We don't sell it. It's just our way of giving back to the community and helping women find meaningful employment. Take it a step further, the tea that we have in our rooms is sourced from Jalinga Tea Estate in the Northeast, which employs 85% women workforce. So we looked at initiatives like this. The laundry bags that we use in our rooms are all made by Jodhpur Mahila Graha Udyog, which is again a women-only organization. And because these are authentic organizations, and because they have a standing and have been recognized in various ways by the government, it lends a lot of authenticity to what we do as a brand, and lends us, helps us build a narrative which is also authentic and meaningful. And this is something we look at on a day-to-day basis. Every time we come, last year when we were looking at even our Christmas trees, because festive, as you all know, is really big in hotels, we said, how can we make A, the trees sustainable, and B, support women in this? So the trees were called Mirrors of Hope, and they were made by karigars who do this lippen art, with mirrors and mud. And our trees, Mirrors of Hope, were all made of that. So we are constantly thinking, And I think if more and more brands do this consciously, together we can really make that meaningful difference and move beyond pinkwashing. It's not a tick in the box. It's something that we believe in, something that we drive passionately, something that we live and breathe, and are answerable for to the company and the board.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
If you had to choose one policy or initiative that could significantly accelerate gender equality in India, what would it really be?
Thanks for the question, Teeshtha. And firstly, a very happy Women's Day to all my co-panelists and to the audience. I think a lot has already been covered by the other panelists, but if I had to choose, I think largely there are three things that I would stress on: education, skilling, and employability. But if I had to choose one that would significantly accelerate gender equality in India, it would have to be ensuring that every girl not only goes to school, because that's already happening, but is supported to complete her education and then to transition into skills and employment. I think that connect is extremely critical, and that's an initiative that needs further ramp up. In many parts of India, girls begin school, with the same hopes as boys do, but somewhere along the way they drop out. When we interact with the girls, very often we find that these could be reasons due to economic conditions, financial burdens. This could be safety of women because schools are far. These could be societal pressures, right, which tell the girls that their roles should remain within the household. And these barriers are often subtle but extremely powerful. I believe that when a girl is able to stay in school, gain skills, and imagine a future that is beyond limitation, it changes much more than her own life. It changes how the families think about their daughters. It changes how communities actually value the women and how the next generation grows up. Which is why it's imperative that education goes beyond enrollment and ensures safety. Parivartan, which is our flagship under CSR, emphasizes on education of girls primarily. We work in creating safe schools, safe infrastructure for the girls. We train the teachers. We provide them with digital access. And we also create an ecosystem that not only supports the girls to learn, but supports their aspirations. And taking it a level up, we also provide scholarships for these girls. The idea is to see how we close this entire loop. We believe, as I said, that if a girl is educated and economically capable, she gains not just knowledge, but confidence, independence, and a voice. In addition to that, if I was allowed to pick up one more topic, then I would say economic participation of women in economic and in the economy and in employment is the next critical goal that I would think is important and needs to be ramped up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Given your experience working and engaging closely with rural communities across India, what insights have rural women offered about resilience and sustainable living that are often missing from urban mainstream discussions on women's empowerment?
Empowerment is extremely contextual to a society, and generalizing it even within rural will not be in good service. However, having said that, I think generally speaking, uh, resilience in rural women is significantly higher than the counterparts. It's rarely loud. It is very, very silent. It's deep rooted, and it's peer to peer learning. What we've seen, we work in last 15 years. We've worked in several villages across the country. We've supported about 2.7 million rural families, which means 2.7 million women who we have worked with. One common thing that we've seen is eagerness to do something for themselves, for their family, something what I said similar, for improving their quality of life. Their sense of empowerment is collective, it's not individual. it's not what for me, it's what I can do for my family, my community, and therefore my children. I think that's a common thread that runs across. There is a lot of there's a natural instinct for moderation and balance, which means there is a I mean the way rural community operates is also on collective strength. So anything that happens is for a group of people, it is never for an individual, which embeds very strongly with sustainability, because then the decisions are taken which are good for everybody. Like I said before, it is about how water gets used, how more people can benefit from the water that we have, how do we take social decisions. To take a very recent example is how do we convert a common land. So every village has a common land which provides fuel and fodder to the village. How the management systems are designed and defined and run by women to have equitable access to it is something which is driven by women. So that's where there is a very high focus on equity and sustainability. It is not about how much I can get for me, but how much collectively we can get for each other. I think it's in a very pure form that sustainability and intent exist in rural communities. It is also not about scaling up always. It is about a very, how do I say, a very silent form of building their own strength. How they utilize money is also very, very smartly done. I think one thing that can really make a difference, and I still think there's a way to go, is having a digital phone. I think one little instrument has the power to accelerate this process, including financial inclusion. It's happening, but it's much slower than what we see now. So I believe a lot of these things are happening. It is work in progress, but it's very encouraging to see what is happening in the village. It's a combination of policy, practice, and years of work that people have put in to make this happen.
Throughout your career, what mindsets, habits, or lessons have helped you stay motivated and grow into leadership? And what advice do you have for young girls who wish to chart their own paths?
Thanks for the question. I think Nusrat mentioned this, and I think all of other panelists have been stressing on this. I think the most important thing that has kept me at least motivated, and I think we are seeing more and more people move in that direction, is the real impact that education can have on lives. I think that's of primary importance. Number one. Number two, I think what's helped me, or what is the advice that I'd like to give to all of you, is that number one, capability builds capacity. So be very strong in your subject matter. Be very, very strong in your core expertise. There is no running away from that. That will bring confidence. That will help you lean in. That will help you hold an opinion. That will help you really provide insights in a world where information that you hold will be competing with information that technology already has. Information that you have will be competing with large language models that can probably say it better than you. So the insight that you bring with experience, that insight that you bring with capability and capacity is, I think, number one, most important. The second habit that I think is very, very critical for leaders or young women as their path the road to leadership is curiosity. Curiosity is that magic ingredient in any sauce that can be added to any boardroom. It can be added to any client meeting. It can be added to a customer meeting. It can be added to a beneficiary. Be curious with conversations. Be open and actually listening rather than just, active listening rather than hearing. And that comes from really being very, very curious. The third thing that I think has I think a habit that has really been important, that I think is resilience, the ability not to give up. It is that 99 times of failure which will lead to that 100th light bulb coming on, and being persistent and resilient in not giving up. I think Dhruvi mentioned it, that women tend to be more resilient. I think that's a secret superpower. And very often in a world where where leadership is viewed from a very male gender or a male lens, now girls and women tend not to use their superpower because they think that's weakness. And I think that resilience and that grit is something that you need to spend time on, and really develop into a strength. And the last thing I think that would really help is choose mentors. Surround yourself by mentors. Surround yourself by a peer group that you can learn from. We all have our friends, and we love our friends, and we love our friends. The ones that we learn from, we love them the most, and we love them the longest. You have few friends who are good time friends, but you have many fewer friends who are those long-term friends, who are the ones who will tell you when you're off, but who will also tell you when you're on. And it's really important to choose your peer group. We tend not to spend enough time thinking about our peer group, and we tend, especially as young women and girls, not spend enough time identifying mentors for ourselves. So I would say seek mentors, build circles of collaboration and a network that will make you a better version of yourself the next day. And if you just focus on that, leadership will happen. Leadership will be the automatic byproduct of this kind of process. So thank you.
Ma'am, my question to you is, what is that one invisible barrier in villages for women which people in cities usually don't notice?
If one was to look at barriers, invisible barriers at that, I think one needs to look at it at two levels. One, of course, as you said, is what is it that people in the city don't realize the women in rural areas are fighting, and what is the barrier there? There I could say that, one can look at three things: acceptance, opportunity, and mobility, right? Because we don't realize that these women in rural areas have to fight right from getting themselves accepted in society as contributing members, as women who can dream and can go out of the house and create a life for themselves. After that, there is opportunity, because there's lack of opportunity in their own area, and mobility. I think mobility is something that really restricts both women and girls in rural areas. In urban cities, you will see that mobility is very often taken for granted. But in rural areas, these girls need permission to travel, whether it is to travel to a school that is in another village, whether it is to travel to centers which provide skilling. And that's something that we've seen as a that we are constantly fighting to get more girls into the training centers. Lastly, also, it affects their ability to get access to healthcare, to jobs, and to other opportunities. Even when these opportunities do exist, to physically reach these, inability to actually reach these centers is something that keeps many of the girls from advancing. I think another barrier, or an invisible barrier, as you say, is in their minds, right? Each of these women, girls, have a barrier where they don't see themselves as capable of thinking differently, of doing things. Very often when we are working in these groups, especially when we are working on entrepreneurship, because in addition to skilling, Parivartan also, that is again my CSR portfolio, looks at creating entrepreneurs, and we've worked with about more than a lakh women where we've created entrepreneurs. And of them, 80% of these are women. But the main job of the facilitators and the partners that execute these programs is to make these women realize that they can dream and that they are capable. I think once that barrier is broken and they accept the power that they have, that they hold within themselves, that I think is the primary barrier, invisible barrier that I would see that they need to break to move out.
So, thank you, youth storytellers, for questions, and gratitude to the panelists for sharing the experiences, learning, and success. Raji, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, there's lots of food for thought, and I'm so glad that we had this unrushed conversation at the beginning, and probably we can move to other things. But I'm sure there are more questions by our youth audiences. I'll request them to put them in the chat box, and at the end of this meeting, we'll go through them again. Thanks. Over to you, Nano.
Thank you, Rajiv. So let me begin with Anjali Mehra. When I say International Women's Day, what comes to your mind?
Two words. I think the first is gratitude. I think every Women's Day, at least for me, I look back at my own journey and I'm grateful to the women who have come through in my life, not just women, but even mentors that I have had. But I think in particular, I'm grateful to the women who have paved the path before us, for us to be where we are today. Be it our mothers, my mother-in-law, who was a big supporter of me starting to work, even though I had very little children at that time. But she was the one that things will fall into place. You can't give up your life. You have to start working. And I'm talking about 38-40 years ago, which was not that easy for people to follow. The second is reckoning. I think, when I look back, I see that so much has happened and we've all come a long way, but there is still so much that needs to be done. And as women who today I feel have been privileged to get to where we are, the least that we can do is support other women to get to where we are. I think biases are a reality. They still exist. I, for one, have faced every kind of bias, whether it is gender, social, ethnic, age, you name a bias, and I have faced it. So biases are not going away. They are a reality. They will continue to stay. We just have to find how we navigate our own journeys around it and seek those mentors and that circle of influence who is going to bring that positivity in your life and help you get to where you want to be. And I think that is the best that we can do, build that circle of sisterhood to help other women get to where they want to be.
Thank you for that answer. Let me come to Dhruvi now. So, on this International Women's Day, what are your thoughts?
We are very similar to what Anjali said, and it's time for reflection. I think I was first introduced to the concept when I was in college, and that time it was more about activism and even trying to understand what this means. And there was no conversation of inclusion, diversity. You had to be, the good thing is we started as equals. We had to find our space, we had to find our footing, and I'm so lucky to be part of that generation who did not have a box to fit in. We just had I'm seeing Nusrat and Anjali nod, so I know all of us, and we didn't have a carpet laid out for us, and we didn't expect one. And it was because we didn't have a carpet laid out, we were not expecting anything, right? We knew we had to work hard, we knew we had to fight it, and we worked as equals. And I think that has been the biggest learning for us. And that was the time, like I said, it evolves, and I'm quite glad to be part of that particular point of time that has really helped us look at equality in a different way, and also then create, hopefully, role models for the next generation, or made the path a little easier for people to follow. I'm not too sure, but that's what the next phase was trying to understand the politics in the organization. And I'm not saying I'm using politics in a wrong way, because every collective, be it an organization, be it a society, has its own way of culture of politics. And it was understanding that politics and how do you navigate that, how do you fit in, which is where the role of mentors, role of sisterhood, all of that starts. Systems develop, and these are invisible systems that happen. So one of the reflection of today is how women have helped our journeys, right? Who came when, how they helped. There's so many women who have walked, and hopefully I would have helped few along the way. And the third phase, which is now, where this whole diversity conversation is more aggressive on the organization side rather than people. And there is now a demand and supply. There's more equal demand and supply happening, which means opportunities, but which also means, are we creating another sort of stereotype that we are trying to break from and fit into another stereotype? I think that's something women need to be very, very mindful of, that empowerment was about a choice to do what you want to do, not to move from one stereotype to another. So that's been the reflection, honestly, today.
And now I come back to you, Nuria. On this International Women's Day, what are your thoughts?
I think it's interesting that International Women's Day started in 2019-10, and there was this, I think it was a German lady, I'm forgetting her name, who proposed that we have a day at a conference, because she was asking for basic fundamental rights, like, for example, fair wage, safer working conditions, right to vote. And that was early 1900s. We are now in 2026, and while the world looks very different, we have women leading countries, we are heading companies, looking at STEM education. I think the access to education problem for girls, at least from an access perspective, has been solved. But I think the gap is still very much real. I think women earn 20% less than men on an average. Completion of secondary schooling is still a challenge. Looking at STEM education, there is still a challenge. International Women's Day is, as I think all our panelists have said, is a day to reflect. I come from a family of a very strong mother who's really the patriarch and the matriarch of the family, and two brothers who are happy to listen to the patriarch and matriarch of the family. But I think such families and such ecosystems are small and far removed. There are these little glimmers of hope, where at the end of the day the question is, तुम लड़की हो जाके ग्लास उठा लो, या तुम लड़की हो मेरे किचन में हेल्प कर दो. There's nothing wrong in helping in the kitchen, nothing wrong picking up the glass, but equity, equality, and access for all. So everyone should have access. I think for me, Women's Day is also a reflection about what needs to be done. It's not about women I think it's not about women asking or demanding. It's just about saying, if we are 50% of the planet, then we should get 50% of the say. And that's not unreasonable to ask. I think real success for me will be when International Women's Day actually doesn't need to be existing anymore, because that would be success. Why do we need to have and this is a conversation that I see a lot of young kids having, that why do we need to have an International Women's Day? What about the rest of the days? And what happens if there is equality, equity, and access for all? Even if you look at the constitution of this country and saying, let's access for everyone, same roots and same rights for everyone, do you need to have an International Women's Day? So I think the charter for us women is to say that maybe in 100 years from now, They will actually talk about the time when there was a Women's Day and then there was progress that was made and now there's no Women's Day. So I think that would be a nirvana state that I hope to achieve and maybe reflect towards working on that.
Very interesting answer. Let me come to you, Nusrat. On International Women's Day, what is uppermost on your mind, especially as someone who has spent decades shaping narratives?
Listening to my fellow panelists, I had a smile on my face because I could so resonate. The journey has been similar. But what I must say is that, when I started out, there weren't terms like diversity, the glass ceiling, etc. These didn't exist, right? We had nothing to fall back on. So, as Dhruvi, I think, mentioned, resilience. I think that was the one thing that actually stood me through the entire journey. But I'm not talking about myself because, enough about the challenges that women have faced and what we've gone through in our journeys, which are pretty much similar. But taking from what Nuria mentioned, that, and I really liked the thought, and I do hope that, maybe not 100 years, but a little before that, there will be a time when we don't need to celebrate women or Women's Day, right? Each day would be equitable and for everyone. However, today, when I actually look at it and when I reflect, I personally feel the change is very, very incremental. And every year during Women's Day, there are celebrations and there is this quiet stock taking that one does. And you realize after having spent, almost 2 decades in the development sector, that change is very, very incremental, right? And especially when you're working at the grassroots, you see that empowerment rarely happens through a single intervention. It happens through layers and layers. You're talking about access, as Nuria mentioned, you're talking about financial inclusion, you're talking about mobility, health, social acceptance, and you're building on each of this to actually move towards any sort of change. In many villages where we work under Parivartan, the first shift we see is often quite simple. You'll see a woman opening her first bank account. That is one milestone that we think she's crossed. Attending a self-help group meeting or actually just stepping out of the house to attend a program. In many of the communities, young women are more educated than the previous generations, and financially, they are more connected to formal systems. So I think that is the incremental change that one has actually seen. These moments or these changes, incremental changes, as I said, may seem very, very small, but they represent a shift in agency, right? We've crossed about 10 crores lives that we've worked. India has made significant progress here, and female literacy has risen around 70%. We have, I think, close to about 90%, 90 million women who are now some part of a collective in some form, whether it is NRLM or otherwise. So my reflection really is that now we are entering the next phase, right, of this journey, and what we need to do is we need to move from expanding access to ensuring meaningful participation. And I think that's the only way that we are going to make this vision that we have of not having a Women's Day in the next 70, 80 years, that dream a possible.
Very rightly said that there should not be a particular day, but every day should be a Women's Day. So let me get back again to Anjali. So, given your expertise in communications, how do you see the role of technology in enabling women's voices?
So, for me, I think firstly, technology is one of the most powerful equalizers of our time. But I view technology as an enabler. I think it can help you amplify your thoughts, your opinions, your voices. But one thing which is a kind of a word of caution is that in this age of AI, where you just type in a few words and it throws up almost anything that you need there. My fear is that we should be careful that we don't lose the authenticity of our voice. I think that is really important because that is what creates meaning. If today, four of us who are here as panelists, if all of us put in the same question and get the same response from AI, then how is Dhruvi's point of view different from Nusrat's, from Nuria's, or mine? Right? So that authenticity of our own individual voice, which comes from our experience, which comes from our journeys, which comes from the lives that we have led and the roles that we have, I think that has to be preserved because that is what creates meaning. And that is what is really authentic and true and will impact change. That is one word of caution that I always feel whenever I look at technology, but it's a great platform to voice and amplify your thoughts, be it social media or be it any of the platforms that you use for communication. It's all technology enabled. I think technology also in fields like ours helps us deliver a far more powerful guest experience and interact with guests and have those conversations which if technology had not been there would not have been that instant and real time.
Individual voice and authenticity is very important. Go for Dhruvi Shah. From the perspective of large foundations working at the grassroots, where should investments be focused today to truly accelerate women empowerment, education, livelihoods, health, financial inclusion, or something else?
Investments investments are done in many forms, right? There is investments that is done by the government, huge investments. There is investment which is done by markets, and then there is investment that is done by people themselves. CSR complements a lot of this investment, so it's important to look at how investments can be shaped up for a certain objective. Now, who decides the objective is the question. There are policies that are designed to create a certain path or a certain solution for a certain problem. They could be around HDIs, they could be around SGDs, they could be around sustainability. Then comes market. Market comes with a purpose of profitability, but without markets, participation is not possible. So the role of market is extremely important. Third is people's own investments. People's own investment are to get most for themselves. So they will invest where they feel that they will get the maximum benefit. And then comes the role of CSR, which in my view is a catalytic fund that can fill up the gap that all of these three funds put forth. What of women empowerment is the role of CSR? I feel it's about building agency, building voice. I think Nusrat said that. It is about creating access because you have all of these things. How do you empower people? None of these three are working on the soft part of it, right? So CSR funds are best utilized to build self awareness, knowledge, access. Empowerment is not a course that you teach, it's a process that one goes through. And I feel the role of CSR is to help communities access all of these things for their benefit, give them the acknowledgement that there is a choice, build resilience over a period of time. All of this put together can lead to empowerment. So if somebody wants to go to school to a different town, how can CSR make that possible? If somebody wants to have a solar irrigation system, how does CSR make that possible? All of this is there. There's a market, there's government, there is their own investments, there is the whole SG system. So I think the role of CSR fund needs to be customized to what people need in a particular time frame. And I think acknowledging this and knowing this makes the purpose of the fund more powerful. Building capacity, I feel, and by capacity, it does not mean just school, just college, skilling. It is to explore the full potential of people as a human resource for themselves. I think this is where CSR investments are most impactful, and that's how I think it can create sustainability for everything else.
Thank you, Dhruvi, for layering the elements. Nuria Ansari, technology is reshaping education, work, and access to opportunity. In your experience, how can technology become a real enabler for women and girls rather than another layer of inequality?
Yeah, I think it's a good carry forward question from previous. I think what do we know about the use of technology currently, right? We know that if I look at AI, I know that about 45% women use AI versus 52% or 55% men use AI or ChatGPT, and it's a very important data point which I'll come back to, and related back to education. So that's data point number one. Data point number two, we know that about 20-25% women are actually in the AI workforce, the remaining are men. And in senior roles, I think it's about 10-15%. Right? Now, which basically means what? It means that less women are engaging with the AI world. We know that that means that the algorithm is picking up less data about women. We know that the algorithm, that means, is going to have less use cases about women. We know that there's going to be lesser technology, there's going to be a lesser view of what is AI and how can it be used when there are less women in leadership positions, about what are use cases for women, right? So on this one angle, there is this entire world that is unraveling before us, where large language models are being taught of in a certain way on a certain platform with a certain piece of data around and a certain algorithm. When I juxtapose that onto technology, what is it telling me? It is telling me that not today, I cannot afford to just use technology as a catalyst. I cannot afford to just use technology as a support. I need to integrate technology into education like never before, with a kind of urgency like never before. I've been in the technology education domain now for about 25 years, right? So we saw the first ICT at school. Every school should have a lab. Every school should have internet. Every school should have smart TV. Every school should have digital content. And those were good things to do. But today, technology has to play a very active role, or the role of technology and education needs to be bound together, because before I can answer a question, whether it is in a rural classroom or an urban classroom, the kids know ChatGPT. I went to a school recently and I asked a government school group of 8th grade government school kids. I said, how many of you know how to use AI? Simple question. 80% of the boys and girls raised their hand. 80%. And they knew ChatGPT name, they knew Gemini name. Right? So and this is rural UP, where these kids say that nahi hamare paas, hum phone pe kar lete hain. Now when technology has come into your village, into your homes, into your pockets, then how can teachers today be 3 steps behind or 2 steps behind? They need to now leapfrog 1 step ahead. And that's why at the Bharti Airtel Foundation, we came up with the teacher app, which is 50 AI tools integrated with teacher capacity, teacher capability, teacher certification, and teachers developing AI-based tools for their own classroom interaction. The idea behind that is, instead of waiting for like landline to 5G, which is 3G, 4G, 2G, all that, we are saying let's try and get teachers up and jump them from really waiting for a teacher for technology in the classroom to using the technology they have in the classroom. So the teacher app is a free app for all teachers. About 200,000 teachers are on it. There are apps, there are AI tools that they can use to create a lesson plan, to create an assessment, to create a diary, to even make a joke. So like, for example, once I typed I want to joke about fractions because I want to introduce fractions in a classroom. So immediately the AI tool threw up saying, what does one half ask the other half? And the answer to that is, when will I be whole again? So these are good things that teachers can use in classrooms, because teachers don't have time otherwise for all this. We look at a teacher's life is pretty stressful. I used to be a teacher and it drove me mad. Just the planning, executing, and reviewing and reflecting in a classroom, it was just was torturous. So today AI has that ability. So I think that's number one. We need to have technology very much center focused. The last point that I want to make around technology and education is that the story about girls in education and girls in technology. So it's not only now about girls completing high school or girls completing secondary school. It's like, how do we keep girls completing secondary school in STEM subjects? Because that's going to be something that is going to be critically important. I think math is going to be, you cannot run away from math. You cannot run away from technology. You cannot run away from science, the sciences. So the real challenge that we're going to be looking at in technology and education is equal access to devices, equal access to the internet, because by itself, technology will not help create equality, because it will end up amplifying the systems we build around it. So if you build unequal systems, it will amplify. If you build equal systems, it will amplify. So I think that's really what the critical role of technology in education is going to play actually going forward.
Thank you and for this insightful answer, and we should put technology at the center stage now. So now I'm coming to Nusrat. So if you look ahead 10 years, what should be the single biggest priority for advancing women's rights and opportunities?
This takes me back to the first question that I answered. In addition to education, skilling, I said that it's important to get women to join the workforce. And I think that connect is what I see as the main agenda 10 years from now, because you've got women, you've got students, you've got a lot of girls who are coming into school. You're creating an environment for them, you're giving scholarships. These children are coming out of school skilling, they are aspiring, they have an aspiration to go somewhere, right? It is important for us to connect them with opportunities and get them into the jobs. And I think that, to my mind, creating that opportunity and connecting them with job opportunities is what 10 years from now I see. And I don't even say 10 years, I think even before, that is what I think will help us come together and say that, hey, we've got a workforce, we've got women who are actually actively contributing to the economy of the country. And that, to my mind, is something that 10 years from now I envisage happening. A lot of this, we've already had a lot of conversations in our own groups in developing projects that we do, which actually cater to this, to see that, how is it that we create a program that actually allows these girls or these women to seamlessly integrate and move from one level to the next, so that they can actually get gainfully employed. And I think that last mile connectivity is what is required and what will be the focus in the next coming years.
So thank you. And now finally, I go back to Anjali Mehra. What message do you have for the next generation of women and girls as they tread on their own paths?
The first is embrace yourself. Embrace who you are. You're special, you're unique, and what you have nobody else has. Believe in that. And here's a little tip. There is a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And this is by Richard Bowles, and it's got a flower diagram in it. And this is something I've done in a lot of workshops. What it helps you do is that it helps you identify your own unique narrative, what makes you so special, and it helps you articulate it, because as you build the petals of your own personal flower, there are certain themes that emerge which make you special. It's a very, very interesting exercise. It's helped me a lot, and I've used it a lot in many workshops. So that is a little tip. The second is be authentic and true to yourself, to who you are, to those around you, and to what you do. I'm a firm believer in authenticity, and I think that also ties into the first point about embracing who you are. I think every panelist here has reiterated the need and the importance of being a master of your craft. There is no shortcut to it. Your domain expertise will earn you the respect that you deserve. It will take you on a journey that and find you the place that is befitting for you, but it will also help you build that confidence. And you believe in yourself, because if you think you can, then there's nobody stopping you. We've all spoken about the importance of mentors, and building that little circle of support that we all need, and choose wisely there. One of the other things that I wanted to highlight is the fact that when it comes to an opportunity, statistics say that a man will raise his hand even if he feels that he's 50% ready to take on to that role. But a woman would not do it unless she's about 120% sure that she's ready to take on that role. And I don't know why we continue to be so hard on ourselves. It's okay, speak up, raise your hand when the opportunity comes, and it's fine if you fail, you'll learn from it and move on from there. As many of the panelists said, resilience is our core strength. So we have that ability to bounce back very, very quickly. When you get a seat at the table, raise your voice, speak up, and help other women to rise, as somebody did for us. I'm sure we've all had mentors, and somebody's done that for us. That's why we are where we are today. So give this back to the people and to the communities in which we live.
Thank you for that mantra, Anjali. Go to Dhruvi. What message would you like to share with the next generation of women and girls?
Try and make choices that are true to yourself and not because somebody has made it and it's a popular choice and it's being popularized. Be true to yourself. Make choices that are most comfortable to you, not because a stereotype has been created and you need to follow through. Leadership is not about a position, a role. Leadership is what difference you can make in yourself, and try and understand what is the difference you are making in the lives of people, either at workplace, your friends, your family. Read a lot, I think, travel a lot, meet a different kind of people. I think today's generation learns very differently. I think there is merit in drawing from how learning needs to be explored and not learned, because now with AI and technology, somebody is trying to teach you rather than you wanting to learn. So get out of your comfort zone, move out, move to different people, different experiences. Movies are great teachers, and then develop what resonates with you as your life goal and your pathway. And like I said again, I keep saying this: don't fall in this trap of stereotyping just because it's popular.
Thank you so much, Ruby, for that. Now I go to Nuria Ansari. What role should governments, private companies, communities, and even families play if we are serious about advancing gender equality? And what message would you like to share with the next generation?
I think real progress will only happen when, I think, and we all know this, right? When policies, opportunities, and social attitudes start moving in the same direction. I think when we look at the governments, and I think governments have been very, very, very actually very serious about creating policy frameworks that invest in things like education, healthcare, financial inclusion. The private sector has been open either through CSR or actually through business decisions to innovate, help women have better opportunities. I think it was earlier said that the over 90 million women who are part of our self-help groups are actually a testament to the fact that when policy, civil society, and all agents work together, how can you succeed? I mean, whether it is savings, credit, a market share. I mean, today there is, through various schemes, even direct benefit of transfers to these women, so that they have a say in their own money. And I think it was Nusrat who said it, that when women get money, then they have a say in for their future, and they tend to spend it smartly. They tend to spend it more intelligently, and they tend to spend it for education of their children. Actually, surprisingly, I think the shift from being the beneficiary to a financial decision maker is the real game changer, and I think that's really what we need to see, how families become comfortable in doing that. Families, when they realize the potential of their daughters and then they support their aspirations, I think that's a big game changer. It's not about just the government or just the school systems, but it's about the dads and the mums and the siblings and the cousins and the masis and the buas and the chachas and the mamas who say, you can do this, or you should do this, or you can also aspire here, or the word always, tum bhi kar lo. That tum bhi kar lo meaning what? Just because I'm a girl, bhi aa jata hai. I think that's the narrative that we need to challenge ourselves on. And I think at the family ecosystem, if we are able to challenge that, the government sector, the private sector, the ecosystem is alive. I think that there is ultimately, it is going to, the trajectory of future women leaders actually depends largely on the women at home, and the women at home as mothers, the women at home as sisters, the women at home as mother-in-laws, as daughter-in-laws, as sister-in-laws, as the ecosystem of women, because the opportunities today are available. And so I think that's where we need to see a shift. I think there needs to be a bit more allyship. We see good dialogues and good intentions, but we need to really work on allyship. So who is my best friend, and how can I help that change happen? I think my final statement on this is that we have seen repeatedly as a best practice, we've seen it in policy, we've seen it everywhere, that when women align with women, then the universe aligns with women.
That's a wonderful line.
Yeah.
And you said tum bhi kar lo, so we should tell us that tum hi kar sakti ho. So Nusrat, finally I come back to you. What message would you like to share with the next generation of women and girls?
One must keep in mind that a lot of the women, and the women that I've come across, not in the organization but outside, in the communities that we work in, they've begun their journey through very, very limited resources, right? And yet, step by step, through education, through learning, through income, through supporting each other, they've actually reshaped their own journeys and that of their families. If I look at that, I think for each of these girls, each of you girls out there, the world that you are stepping into, the canvas that you have, the pathways that you have are much more than the generations before you had, right? Whether it's education, technology, it's enterprise, entrepreneurship, or leadership. So I think you have a great canvas that you need to work in, but progress will still require confidence, which many of my co-panelists have said will come with knowledge, with being subject matter experts in your domain, in your field. Persistence, right? Persistence and acceptance of change, because the way things are changing, you need to constantly learn, upskill, relearn, and learn the new age skills to be relevant. So definitely persistence, and lastly solidarity, which I think was also mentioned. Solidarity with each other, because creating this network of like-minded women, whether it's your friends, whether it is your peers, learning from them and getting that emotional support, I think that is extremely important in creating this resilience, this confidence, and this ability to hold on and not let go. There's this saying that very often I use, I think it was Roosevelt who really said that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams, right? And I think for the young women today, the challenge is not only to dream, but beyond the dream, you need to claim that space. You need to build your own capabilities and you need to lift others along the way. So to summarize that, I say, do not let your expectations, or rather I would say, do not let societal expectations limit you, right? Support each other, keep learning and keep growing. Thank you.
That's a wonderful answer. Women support women and resilience and persistence. Thank you all for sharing this mine of knowledge. We have a couple of questions for. This is from Radhika Sharma. From your experience, what are the biggest barriers preventing rural women from achieving economic independence?
I think I'd like to say two things here. One is today a farming family does the share of in the whole farm to plate journey, the share of producer, which is a farming family, is very limited. I think increasing their share in that value chain itself will bring in a lot of more money to the producer, who's also the highest risk taker in that value chain. Second, specifically for women, it would be about financial awareness, insurance, and having access to digital platforms. I think these are things that will enable better economic independence, and of course, like I said, land rights. I think these are three things that needs some amount of policy and practice push.
I hope that answers your question, Radhika. And now Radhika has a question for Anjali Mehra. What are the most persistent invisible barriers preventing women from advancing in leadership today?
All in our own minds. I don't think there is anything else that restricts us. If we think and believe that we can, we can. So just believe in yourself and go after achieving whatever you need. I've also highlighted a few other things. When you get an opportunity to speak up, do that. Raise your hand when an opportunity comes. I think
Shubh has a question for Anjali. Which leading indicator signals that a campaign is achieving the desired impact?
I think every campaign has its own objective, and therefore the parameters for judging the success of a campaign are different. One thing that we should be cautious about is not getting carried away into vanity metrics. So sometimes we see that a campaign has got a lot of visibility. That is not a true judge of how effective the campaign is. The sentiment and whether that campaign has been able to bring out the behavioral change or the attitudinal change that we were seeking, that is what we need to look at.
And on that note, we come to the end of this roundtable, but it's not the end, but the beginning. Thank you all for joining us. This is Naina Gautam signing off for Sustainability Karma.
We hope you like this program. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma.